So we're joined now by Paula and Padraic Nocton. First and foremost, thank you very much for having us here today. Paula and Padraic, no words can describe what you must be going through. No words can understand what you're going through. But what we want to try and do firstly is tell us about the Nocton family.
Yeah, well, there's five of us, myself and Paula and the three boys. Archie is 8 and George and Isaac are 3. We moved here in 2006 to come and live here in Roscommon, and we thought all our dreams had come true. Living in a lovely community, had an amazing 3 children, and we were living the dream that everything was wonderful, and we just thank God every night for what was going on.
It leads me into the next question, and I suppose a question that was going to change your lives, certainly, and the way you saw things differently. The 9th of November 2012. Bring us back to why you went and had the test done firstly and foremostly, and what was going on there with the twins, and what was going on with Archie to warrant tests being done.
Well, what had happened is after Archie, once Archie came round from being unconscious from the meningitis, he didn't stand for a good number of days, and when he did start moving, he was dragging his left leg. So automatically, all of us put that down to his meningitis. And I suppose when you have anyone who's had a child who has been critically ill, you're just so grateful. So the fact that he was dragging his leg and was having problems with walking, that didn't matter to us. It was all about how do we make this better for him? What are the solutions for this? So he would have been having physiotherapy and occupational therapy to help him. But he clearly had problems with what we would call gross motor skills. So the physiotherapists were thinking about referring him to Dun Laoghaire to be assessed to have Botox put in his muscles to see if that would help him, because he would be very delayed physically compared to his peers and was struggling in sports and things. At the same time, Isaac was walking, but he was having problems getting off of the floor. And so, of course, because we'd heard of muscular dystrophy, we'd never heard of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, we have no family history, we didn't at all at any moment link what was happening with Archie to what was happening with Isaac. We actually thought Isaac's problems was because we'd babied him. They were twins, you needed to get things done quickly, George would jump up and Isaac wouldn't, so we'd lift him up. So we thought maybe we just babied him. At his developmental check, we spoke to the public health nurse, and she said, it'd be a good idea to get him checked with a physio. And that's really when it started. The physiotherapist said he needed to see the paediatrician. Archie already had an appointment for the 9th, for the 6th of November. So we took the 3 of them that day, and the doctor examined Isaac and Archie, and his face began to fall. We knew this man very well, Dr. Curran, because he'd looked after Archie when he was sick, and we knew something was very wrong. And he said to us that it's very worrying. It could be their nerves, but he thinks it's their muscles. And the only thing that went into my head that I thought about muscles was muscular dystrophy.
Paula and Padraic, bring us back to what your understanding is of Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a genetic disease. It affects, the literature would say it affects 1 in every 3,500 newborn boys and 1 in 50 million girls. And the reason it affects more boys than girls, it would be an X-linked disease.
In terms of it, did you know much about Duchenne muscular dystrophy previous to all of this? I personally haven't known anything at all about it previously, but in terms of yourselves, when the doctors or specialists said to you that your sons have Duchenne muscular dystrophy, Did you know anything at all about it? How did that come about that you enlightened yourself on it?
Neither of us had ever heard of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Whilst we're nurses, we wouldn't be paediatric specialists, and it is obviously an area that you would find within paediatrics. We'd both heard of muscular dystrophy. That would be an umbrella term for very many different types of dystrophies. But Duchenne muscular dystrophy, the first time it came into our kind of understanding was after the 6th of November when we saw the consultant. And then I suppose I left it for a day, and then on the 7th of November I started looking at it to see, what could it be that the boys might have.
Take us back to that, Paula. Obviously Google and certain specialists will tell you not to Google the cause. When you Googled it, I'm sure you did, or you found out or from colleagues or books, medical books, what was your initial thoughts and your initial reaction?
Complete horror and disbelief, and that's the first time anyone's asked me that question, and I can see myself sitting in the room, and I can feel how it felt to read those words, and to read particularly 100% fatal. Every page I looked at, that's what jumped out at me. That whatever we did as things stand, that our children would be paralysed and they were going to die.
Asking you both this question, how do you deal with it? How have you been fit to get up in the morning, to put the smile on for the kids' sake? How are you fit to deal with it? How are you fit to deal with the pressures of media, the pressures of financial worries, the pressure of trying to obviously get the best facilities for your children? How are you fit to cope and deal with that? Because that must be excruciating in its own right.
We'll be telling lies if we didn't struggle. We struggle. It's a challenge in the mornings to get out of bed. But I suppose how we look at it, or how I look at it, is that we're part of the solution. We're the hope for our boys. So if we give up, who else has got the boys got? So we feel we got to keep fighting and keep challenging all these obstacles that come our way. But we have down moments, we have despair. Sometimes we have a lot of despair in our lives. But that's between Paul and myself. We don't show it openly to the boys, but we have to kind of fight on a battle. It's one massive battle. But and I suppose the other reason why we're very good actors. We have to be, because there are lots of things. Our whole lives are turned upside down. A time bomb is going off inside our boys. We can't control it. And there's nothing as helpless as parents to watch your children gradually deteriorate in front of your eyes and you can't do anything. So that's so overwhelming. We feel so powerless, and we've always said our jobs have involved working with people and trying to come up with solutions how best to manage their difficulties and the challenges. We're now in a situation on ourselves that we haven't got any solutions in relation to our boys' needs, and that's very, very difficult. Very difficult.
You've obviously carried these children inside you for 9 months, struggling with the twins to ensure that they came out. How do you deal with it? Have you faith? Are you a religious person? Where do you get your strength from yourself?
I suppose I would have a very strong faith. I would. And I believe that this is one of the craziest things I've ever heard in my life. And I don't use that word lightly, but I just think it's ridiculous that a family that had never heard of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, that has no family history, is in the position that we have 3 children. I suppose, the boys are identical twins, so it's 2 pregnancies. There are lots of other families with 2 children. we're not suggesting for 1 second that we have the monopoly on grief and, you know, that it's worse for us than any other family. That's not what we're saying. I suppose what drives me on is the fact that I truly believe there has to be a solution to this. I believe that this has happened to our family because we would be particularly tenacious, I suppose. We would be solution focused, and we hope that what we're trying to do here is definitely not just in the interest of Archie, George and Isaac, but it's about all the other boys and girls, you know, and we would call them the Duchenne warriors. And so for all the Duchenne warriors, past, present and future, because I think it's important that people understand that even if a treatment and a cure is found, this will still happen. 35 to 40% of children who are diagnosed are like our children with no previous family history. But what we're striving for is that all of these children have a hope, they have a chance, they have the opportunity to live a life of meaning, but also that the poor doctor that is sitting in front of parents like us is able to say, I'm terribly sorry to tell you that your son has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, but this is how we treat it. This is how we cure it. And that's why I get out of bed every morning, even when I think, my goodness, what is today going to bring? Will we go into Archie's bedroom and him not be able to get out of bed? What will happen next time he falls over? Because it can be as quick as that. We don't know when the day will arrive when Archie can't move anymore on his own. And we dread that day. We dread it more than anything.
So far in the kids, what changes have you noticed in the children?
They would all have difficulties with movement. The tagline of the Join Our Boys Trust is keep moving. The evidence is that you try and keep the children moving for as long as possible, partly to protect their health, mainly to protect their health, but also the hope that a treatment will be found before they stop moving. So they would have problems climbing the stairs, running, hopping, skipping, jumping. And when you've seen them a few times now, and to look at them, they're just like every other child. They are like every other child. They're normal little boys who have the same hopes and dreams and aspirations of every other child. Where you see the difference is when you see them with their peers, when you see them lagging behind them, not being able to keep up physically, when you see them stumbling and falling, when you see them not be able to get up off of the floor. That's when you see the difference and you realise that, you know, these children are different. These children do have problems.
In terms of the children themselves, obviously the two younger children wouldn't be as advanced and have an understanding of knowing what is going on. But for Archie, he's in national school, he's along with his own friends. What have you told Archie in relation to his sickness?
Well, we've said to Archie that, he knows about the Join Our Boys Trust. What we've said to him is that
what we've said to him is that what happened in February is Archie asked one night when we were putting him to bed, him and I were in the room on our own, he said, Mummy, am I going to die? He'd seen all these different doctors, and any parent, any auntie, any uncle listening to that, it's just horrific to think that your child has even had that thought when they're 7 years old. So I was shocked and taken aback, but explained to him that we're all going to die and that hopefully he's got a long time to live and many happy years. But the reason he's seeing all of the doctors is because he has a problem with his muscles. His muscles don't work properly. He has something called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, because we want to see if we can get people out there to help find a treatment or a cure. He doesn't understand the catastrophe that Duchenne muscular dystrophy is. And our massive fear is that someday, unintentionally somebody will come to him and say, I heard my mummy say that you're going to die. Is that true? And we can't control that.
How do you think you will react to that when and if that day does come, that he comes in from school, and we all know that school children, and you know in your own practices how cruel some school children can be. If Archie came in and said, "Mommy, they're saying to me in the playground that I'm going to die." How are you going to deal with that, or have you thought of what way you are going to deal with that?
I suppose we hope, we obviously don't know, we hope that we manage to have that conversation with him before that happens. But obviously we cannot guarantee that. We've worked very closely with the school, and letters have been written to parents and conversations have been had, because we also wanted to protect other people's children. So when they saw images of the boys in the paper, and that the parents had time to think about how they'd answer their own children's questions. So the local community has been fantastic, as you know. So everybody, the children in the school, their understanding is they want to help Archie and his brothers, and I don't think any child would intentionally try and cause him harm. But it's very difficult to answer your question, Brian, and we just have to hope that we manage to do that before that happens, but we don't know.
And if it does happen, we'll have to sit him down and tease out what his thoughts and views on it, and gradually sow the seed that what's the reality of possibly what's happening. But it's difficult to foresee that, or it's difficult to even think about that sometimes, for me anyway, personally, the enormity of that situation.
Can you go through, to the best of your understanding, of the different stages of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and talk us through what your understanding is of the different stages of Duchenne muscular dystrophy?
Children are born with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And I suppose that's one of the cruelest things about it. You believe your children are healthy, they look perfectly healthy, they look perfectly normal. Often difficulties are picked up. Isaac would be a classic case. He was 2, he was having problems getting up off of the floor. So they would be the first things. It's very evident that there's problems with gross motor skills. And as time goes on, the problems with mobility just get worse. And I suppose, in a very crude way, the problems start at the feet, up the body. So the Achilles, the heel cord would become tight, so the children have problems putting their feet flat on the floor. They'd have a different way of walking. It's called a waddling gait. They would maybe swing their arms a bit and push their little tummies out to try and balance themselves. But basically what happens is the muscles, there's a protein missing in the muscle. The muscle isn't anchored enough, so the muscle becomes damaged and dies. So between the ages of 8 and 12, over 90% of children would lose the ability to walk. And then into their early teenage years, other muscles are affected. They have problems lifting their arms up to feed themselves, to wash themselves. Things like privacy and dignity are lost to the children very early on, because everything has to be done for them. And I suppose for us, one of the saddest things is that, as I said earlier, we'd be very demonstratively, physically, and the children lose the ability to hug each other and hug us, and that's really, really sad for us. And we really hope that doesn't happen, but as things stand, that will. And whilst, if that wasn't enough, whilst all that's going on in these children, their other muscles, their respiratory muscles, their intercostal muscles, they help us with our breathing. They become damaged, and I suppose the ultimate muscle really is our heart. So the children require artificial ventilation to breathe, and also because they're sitting in a wheelchair from such an early stage, they have a high possibility of developing this curvature of the spine. So they require metal rods to be inserted into their backs so they can sit up and so they can breathe. So there's lots of things that the children have to endure that would be any parent's worst nightmare. Just one of them would be any parent's worst nightmare. But they have this whole catalogue of things happening to them. And they die of respiratory and cardiac failure.
The challenges, tell us a bit about the challenges that you face with having not just 1 but 3 children with Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
Well, the first challenge we've got is the accommodation. we moved to Roscommon in 2006 and bought a nice house. We thought it's still our home, but the reality is over time it's not going to be possible for the three boys to live here successfully in the event of it's a two-storey property. So as a result, there's going to be difficulty getting a wheelchair up and downstairs, etc. So initially the first major challenge is trying to find alternative accommodation with a view to the long-term needs of the children. That includes if one day the possibility of them being three motorised wheelchairs needing to be accommodated in a particular property. So that's one of our first challenges. The next challenge is to try and raise sufficient funds to try and look at this alternative accommodation. And that's something that we've done in relation to Join Our Boys Trust, to try and establish a means or a forum to try and increase awareness around Duchenne muscular dystrophy, but also raise awareness with the view to try and get monies for the boys to be able to live in this identified property that's been suggested or proposed. The third challenge is the long-term care needs of the boys. As Paula stated earlier, the children are going to be completely dependent on mum and dad, other carers, and other people to try and do the basic needs: feeding, washing, dressing, eating, toileting. So mobilising every aspect of their life is impinged by Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So it's looking at able to achieve and maximise resources out there to try and bring them in with a view to try and support us for the boys to have a good quality of life, dignified and be respected for who they are.
The figure that's been talked about, I suppose we can bring in Join Our Boys Trust was set up. Tell us about Join Our Boys Trust, first and foremostly.
The Join Our Boys Trust came about, I suppose, like we said, it's about finding solutions, and we looked into what is it that we can do. This is ridiculous. It was 2012. Why have we never heard of this? Why is it not talked about? What can be done? So our first goal was to start up a charity, and we got lots of advice, legal advice, advice from tax consultants, all kinds of people. One of the local politicians was helping us, and the advice we were given is, there is actually a national charity, Duchenne Ireland, who are trying to fund research into a treatment or a cure. But also, how, as Padraic said, how are you going to manage to look after three children? You both work full time. You're going to still have a mortgage to pay and bills to pay. What do you need? You need to set up a trust. So that's what we did. We went about doing that. So something that's really, really important to us is that anything we've ever tried to do, we always try and do it to the best of our ability and to make sure that it's sound. And we couldn't bear to. First of all, it's very difficult for us to even ask anyone for help. The thought of going out and asking people to give their hard-earned cash to help us with lots of different things filled us with horror. And I think that's part of the reason we couldn't talk for so long about any of it, because it just felt so awful, because we knew we'd need help. So the governance structure of the trust is really, really important. We have 4 trustees. One of them's a doctor, one of them's an accountant, one of them's a guard, one of them's a business person. And that wasn't by accident. We did that on purpose because we felt it was important that other people would understand that these are, respected people in the community. They know what they're doing. They're professional people. And then we decided that we needed more than that the project was going to be very, very big, and therefore we would need other people on board. So we have 4 working groups. We have the clinical and research group, we have the fundraising group, we have the building the house project group, and then we have the PR and media communications group as well. And the thing that's really extraordinary is that this really has been a community project. It's a project that the boys live in Roscommon. Everybody involved with the trust is local. And that we decided that we wanted this to be a project that started from the ground level and then hopefully would grow up. And one of the organisations that's been helping us is the Roscommon Rose Centre. They had their competition very recently, and one of the roses really summed it up. She said, the people of Roscommon have your back. And the people of Roscommon do have our back, and we will never, ever be able to express our gratitude to them. The problem we have is that the situation is so grave for our boys and all the other children out there. We need the country of Ireland to have the back of the Join Our Boys Trust. We need the Irish diaspora, the British people, we need people all over the world to know about Duchenne muscular dystrophy and come join our boys, in the hope that, like many other diseases, the funding is sought, secured, and a treatment and a cure can be found for these children. All roads will lead us back to Roscommon because this is where the children are from, but the Join Our Boys Trust is a call to action, to ask ordinary people like us, everyday people like us, families, to, listen to the story and think about just giving a very small amount to help the cause, really, for Archie, George and Isaac, but all the other children.
In terms of the funding that you are looking at the minute, the estimated figure that you require or need is circling at over 1 million. And I know there's massive fundraisers and local fundraisers, and as you say, the people have really come in behind it. What many people will want to help Padraic and Paula Nocton and the Nocton kids. What can they do? What would you like them to do? By watching this on their computers or on YouTube or on television or whatever, wherever they're watching it, what do you want them to do? How can they help? Because many people want to help.
Well, I suppose first of all we want to increase the awareness around Duchenne muscular dystrophy, highlight that this challenge is out there. We didn't know anything about this until we were impacted and affected by it. So we want to increase awareness and how it's devastating the lives of all these young boys and girls. But also I suppose what we're looking for is that one day that we'll have a treatment and a cure. So what we'd like people to do is, if possible, to give generously towards our trust, Join Our Boys Trust, alternatively other trusts who are, or charities who are specifically kind of directing money towards the treatment and management or cure of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So collectively, both nationally and internationally, we can come together and crack this nut as such, and make all our lives much more bearable, and also gives us hope that the lives of our boys is bright, and that they can live a normal quality of life like myself and Paul, or like any other mums or dads.
In summary, Paul and Padraic, if I was to ask you, probably what will be a difficult question, what is your dream for your kids? What's your dream?
I suppose, like every parent, your dream is that your children outlive you, that they're healthy, that they're happy, and they choose a profession that makes them feel fulfilled, and ideally give something back to society if you're very lucky. I suppose I'd have a personal dream that, it might sound a bit crazy, but I've always had this image of a photograph of me with the 3 boys, and they'd all be taller than me, and they'd obviously be standing up. And before November 2012, that seemed like it would be a possibility, that standing on the mantelpiece would be a photograph of me and my 3 men, my 3 little boys, as grown-ups, with us all smiling and being very happy. And you'd be in the photograph too. And we would just be a normal family, And I suppose that's what's so difficult, is that we just feel so abnormal now. We don't feel like a normal family. And we feel like our hopes and our dreams have been robbed. And we want to find a way to get them back.